Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Murder in Retrograde. Today, we are going to bring you several cases, actually, and we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to bring you guys some updates that we found on a case that we covered not too long ago. Matthew Coleman, if you guys will remember, the dad that was very into QAnon and murdered his two children in Mexico. So he remains behind bars without bond as he awaits trial, and now the FBI is looking into his browser history and messages. A joint motion was filed last week by the U.S. Attorney and the federal public defenders, both sides asking that the trial be delayed until next May so that they can continue to gather relevant evidence in the case. So that's how long they anticipate this is going to take. They have a computer, two phones, and an iPad that are being searched. And it's a gigantic undertaking. Can you imagine like going back, just you and I alone, like our Marco Polos, our text messages, our emails? It would take a really long time.
Yeah, no, that's a crazy amount of data to go through. I was just thinking as you were saying, Matt, like just when we get a piece of something that we're interested in and we're researching it and how many tabs you have open just in that hour or something. So to go over months or years worth of his, I guess you would call it research or trying to find more information about these QAnon theories that he was so invested in. I mean, it's got to be a lot.
Yeah, they're focusing specifically on web browsing history, text messages, email messages, and postings on message boards and groups that discuss QAnon conspiracy theories. Because, according to his friends, and I haven't actually heard the police say this, but he would be on the computer for hours,
Yeah.
like all hours of the night, researching this stuff. And I mean, getting brainwashed or, going further and further down the spiral of mental illness.
Which also sounds like partially like an addiction too to these things, right? Like you're spending so much of your time doing this and taking away from your children and your family and your everyday life. Like it's kind of wild.
Yeah, I wonder how. I shouldn't say I wonder how that happens because that's true crime for me. Like,
Yeah.
I will stop everything and start researching it. But to fall down a rabbit hole of believing conspiracy theories, I don't know. You just have, I guess you have to catch a person at the right time. But sorry, ADD sidebar. Did you see all the people that went to Texas?
Oh my God. I was gonna talk about that too.
Okay,
Yes.
just in case anybody doesn't know, now QAnon, or yesterday, QAnon said that JFK Jr. was going to reappear right where his father was killed in Texas, in Dallas. And so all like
Hundreds.
hundreds of people. I even heard Michael Flynn was there, like actual politicians. And can you believe it? He didn't show up.
Oh
Can
my
you believe
gosh.
it?
And so now what happens to all these people? Are they like making excuses to why he didn't show up? Like, is it the wrong time? I don't, it's,
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that it's probably gonna be Obama's fault. That's
it's gonna go
what it
back
will
to
come
like
down.
Pizzagate or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
But
another.
I mean, clearly this is happening to masses of people, and it's not like I said, like you can get people at the right time, like somebody who you thought or somebody that's a good person could fall into this
I
trap.
think it
We
just kind
all.
of it falls into some like being a little bit naive too, because there are little nuggets of things that could be plausible, and then you fall down that, and then it almost leads to and then by the time you're at the
Yeah.
end of it, you're like, oh well, yeah, it makes sense. It's like this crazy.
Yeah, it's almost like Scientology because in the beginning they don't tell you things, but the more money you
The
give,
more you're
the
invested,
higher your
yeah.
rank and more information you get. And then when you get to the very top, because people have exposed it now, they tell you that we're all aliens. And have you heard of Xenu?
No. Oh yeah. I know a
He's
lot
like
about
the
the
god, and
yeah.
it's just like the most ridiculous story you've ever heard. It's like one of whatever his name is. What's the guy's name who started it?
Oh
L. Ron
God.
Hubbard's
Thank you.
books.
I was kind of laughing. Again, sidebar, but American Horror Story, they did like a two-parter, and the second part was like aliens and stuff, but he kind of poked fun of this whole lizard people thing because he put that in there. Like these big politicians, they were talking about them being lizard people and like showing the side. It was actually really funny, but it's
That's great.
crazy that people actually believe this. But
Yeah,
anyways,
it seems crazy, but it can be done. And there's so much psychology that goes into brainwashing them and the bots that continue to cause us to fight online and all of that. So, the motion went on to say, quote, instead of waiting until agents have completed the searches and providing only data seized as responsive to the warrants, a mirror image of the computer's entire drive and full Celebrite downloads for the phones and iPad will be provided to the defense by November 5th, 2021. So, I mean, in 2 days, they'll have everything and then they have to comb through it. And it says that by that date, the United States will also provide additional discovery consisting generally of cell site data, Mexican law enforcement reports, photographs, recordings of or from the area of the murders, jail recordings, and videos from the port of entry.
how is he fighting this with all of this evidence that's going to show what he's been, or is he just pleading insanity, or is he just saying, and he didn't actually plead anything, or he just said not guilty? It's wild.
Yeah. And then, and nothing's going to start until May. So I would hope that they would present all of this and say, look, take a deal.
Yeah.
Don't waste
Save
your
your
time
wife the like the even more agony.
yeah.
It's
So,
sad.
anyhow, that's the update on that case. And now what we wanted to talk about today was a big talking point in the true crime world about how the Gabby Petito case and how everybody jumped on it and how important it was. And then you had, it seems like that happens all the time now in America. Like if something is big and in the news, then comes a rush of people that it's like, what about this over here? And it's like everything is important. And yes, we need to pay attention to all cases, but there were so many reasons I think that the Gabby Petito case just took off. You know, there was so much evidence online that internet sleuths could look at. But anyhow, it's true that unfortunately, good looking white people, when they go missing, it tends to go viral and everybody's concerned. And it sends a terrible message. I mean, look at young children that don't have white skin thinking like, why don't they show anybody else, you know, on TV and that sort of thing. So that's a major reason we wanted to start this podcast. And Gabby Petito's family even created the Gabby Petito Foundation, which was founded to help cold cases such as these that we're talking about, and to address the needs of organizations that support locating missing persons, and to provide aid to organizations that assist victims of domestic violence, obviously. So we want to highlight just a few of the cases that happened while everyone was searching for Gabby. A lot of other people were found, and we want to give their story.
Shine some light on it. So last week we had talked quite a bit about how the FBI decides when to get involved. And so to answer that, the FBI intervenes in violent crime. And per the FBI.gov website, it says the FBI's top priorities are national security threats, but the Bureau also continues to play a key role in combating violent crime in big cities and local communities across the United States. The FBI concentrates on crime problems that pose major threats to American society. Significant violent crime incidents such as mass killings, sniper murders, and serial killings can paralyze entire communities and stretch state and local law enforcement resources to their limits.
Isn't that interesting? I did not expect that to be the reason that to be how they posed it, at least, that they have to stop things that will paralyze communities in that way. But that makes sense.
Like the trying to calm things down before things can get like out of control. And so it does seem like it's kind of a big umbrella of what could fall into some of these things. So it really is up to them just to say, is this worth us getting involved, or is there enough there for us to get involved, or whatever. So it's really interesting. And also when we talked about Gabby Petito, we did cover the killing of Kylan Schultz and Crystal Turner quite a bit, but I'm just going to recap a little bit, and because there also has been a few updates. So both women, they're married, were shot and killed at a campsite outside of Moab in Utah in August, right around the same time, Gabby and Brian were there, and their case was initially investigated to find potential links to Brian and Gabby because it just seemed too coincidental. And the Kylan and Crystal were reported missing on August 16th, and then they were found dead and partially undressed on the 18th. So it was an hour outside of Moab where they were shot and killed. They reportedly had been camping in the La Salle Mountains and told friends of this creepy guy that was bothering them. And the weirdest thing of it all was that they literally told their friends, I think it was via text, if something happened to us, we were murdered, which is so disheartening to know that they knew they were in danger in a sense.
Trust your gut. If you felt that way, if you
100%.
feel that way, leave.
Yeah.
Don't think like, oh, I'm being dramatic.
I feel like we almost gaslight ourselves, right? We're like, oh, you're being crazy. Like, no, listen to that voice inside of you.
Well,
that's
society does that to women. Society quiets women down, but trust your gut. Our guts are better than anything else.
Yeah. So when Petito's case first made headlines, authorities were investigating the connection between her disappearance and then this double homicide. And one of the women also worked at Moonflower Community Cooperative, where Brian was seen where they had their altercation outside. I think there's still speculation if he actually hit her or whatever the deal was, but where their fight is where one of these women worked. And the county sheriff's office released a statement saying that they found no connection between the Schultz Turner murders and Petito's case. But some, including a private investigator, Jason Jensen, has not ruled out a connection. So the party line is it's not connected, but other people think that is, so they're involving themselves. And Cindy Hunter, who was a friend of one of their dads, was the woman who actually found them. And she recently told ABC4 that, quote, we know nothing. They told us Brian Laundrie was not involved. They've told us that we're safe, but they don't tell us why. None of us feel safe.
Yeah, so this was the friend that found them. I don't know if you remember this, but she was on the phone with their dad, and you told me about this. And she was worried, and so she got there, and then she ended up finding them in a really horrific scene. Mm-hmm. And then, Jenna, what did the dad say on the phone?
He told her just to get out. I mean, I don't remember the quote, but he basically said, like, get out of there, because she was frightened and she didn't know if the person who was responsible was still there. And, you see listen, I feel like some people run towards fire, some people run away from fire. It doesn't make you a good or bad person in either situation. And I just feel like she was scared, and he told her, he's like, get out of there.
Oh, I can't imagine. I mean, she probably could feel the energy, because I think they determined that it was not very long before that it had happened,
Yeah. It's just, I feel for her. I really do. Because you can't get that out of your head, unfortunately. And it's just sad. So the update kind of to this is on September 20th, a search warrant was executed for a, quote, tower dump from a cell tower at Jimmy Keene Flats. That's not far from the campsite that the women were found at. And the affidavit stated that those phones that are only within 2 miles of the crime scene. So they did the dump with only 2 miles, which, I mean, I guess is understandable, because if it's any further than that, that's gonna be hard to weed out people.
Yeah, it's literally in the middle of nowhere,
So then but I feel like that's like, that could bring you good information, because what is some random person doing in the middle of nowhere, right? Unless they were at the campsite or, so I feel like hopefully that brought some information. The affidavit also states that the information is, quote, evidence of a crime, crimes of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with evidence, sexual assault, desecration of a corpse, and rape. So that gives you a lot more information into what happened to these women.
Yeah.
And it goes on to so I'm just going to read kind of the quote from the affidavit. So it said, on August 18th, 2021, at approximately 11:20 hours, investigators with the Grand County Sheriff's Officer were dispatched to a campsite near the Loop Road with GPS location. And it gives it and it says when investigators arrived, a blue Kia Sorento, a single camp tent, a makeshift rabbit shelter, and normal amenities for long-term campsite were observed. So that's the scene. So they
Okay.
obviously had been living there. I don't know what the makeshift rabbit shelter is all about.
I'll be honest, this is a little upsetting to me. Maybe it was their pet and they traveled with it. I don't understand, but
No, yeah,
I
I
like how
don't.
it's makeshift
Yeah, I don't.
as opposed to couture designer. I mean,
This is what they have to write, right? Because it has to be as detailed as possible. So it says in a nearby creek, 2 female bodies were found. The bodies were identified as belonging to Crystal Turner and her wife, Kylan Schultz. Both women were undressed from the waist down. One of the females had on a bra that was raised to expose her breasts, while the second female was dressed in only a tank top. Investigators located multiple gunshot wounds on both bodies. The wounds were located on the backs, sides, and or chests of the victims.
wow.
It should be noted that these 2 females were reported missing Monday, August 16th.
That's crazy. If they were shot on the backside, that's like they had to have been running away.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Oh,
And then it says investigators were informed that Kylan had mentioned to her friends that if something happened to them, they were murdered. And they continued by saying the quote unquote creepy man around their camp had intimidated them. So we don't really know what he did or said. They just said that they intimidated them. And then currently, the Grand County Sheriff's Office, the Utah State Bureau of Investigations, and the FBI are still working this case. So a lot of people involved. I'm glad to see that they're still looking into it. I personally don't think at first I was like, there has to be a connection with Brian Laundrie. Like it just doesn't make sense. After more and more information comes out, I don't think so. I think it's a really crazy coincidence, but we'll see. If it comes out and says they were in that campsite, then like maybe I'll have a different opinion, but
sadly, to me, it sounds like a hate crime. It sounds like
oh, I
a
didn't even
creepy
think about that. My
a
God.
creepy man was intimidating them. There's plenty of very ignorant men who get very violently angry when they see lesbians, and then
And that would
because
make
that
sense too with the sexual assault. I feel like too, like,
of both of them,
yeah,
that's
it doesn't
and the
specify.
shooting, all of it. I mean, it's intense and angry, and I don't know. I just the whole murder sounds like a lot of rage.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I really just, I'm glad. I'm just like I said, I'm glad to see there's more than just one division kind of involved in this. So hopefully they'll have more resources and can get more answers because these families deserve some closure also. Like just because they weren't Gabby Petito doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same respect in terms of getting information and all that.
Right. And I don't know whether or not they had anything, but I just want to take this moment to say I think women are stronger than anything. But please, if you're out in the wilderness or something like that, have bear spray, have pepper spray, have,
Or if
a
you're licensed, carry a freaking weapon. Like,
yeah, anything. You need to have something to protect yourself because it's just a fact that some men are larger in size than us and totally insane.
yeah.
So the third victim that was found during this search for Gabby Petito was a 55-year-old woman named Sarah Baird. And her remains were found off a highway in El Paso County, Colorado, an area Petito and Laundrie had visited and posted Instagram pictures of. So that's why they had searched this area. And the El Paso County Sheriff's Office has been asking for help locating her. They had been asking for help for months after she was last seen getting gas in Parker, Colorado. Baird was reported missing on July 4th, and she last spoke to someone on June 27th, and she was last seen at a gas station on June 28th. And then her remains were found very recently off Highway 83. Ugh.
Do we know how far her body was found from the gas station? I'm just curious. I mean,
It's really close. It's very, very close.
hmm,
Because that's right what that's in the vicinity of where I live.
okay.
And yeah, it's in the same city.
Okay. Interesting.
Baird's death was originally being investigated by the Major Crimes Unit with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, but the Sheriff's Office did not elaborate on Thursday night on as to whether or not they believed the death was suspicious. So that to me sounds like accident or suicide.
Oh yeah, suicide would make more sense than
Because they wouldn't call that suspicious. It would be pretty self-explanatory, I would think. But if anybody has any information, please call 719-520-6666. Any information that could help investigators. The investigation by the coroner for the cause of death has stalled out because there wasn't enough tissue. It was mostly just bones. Because it had been months and,
so she wasn't in a car or anything, right? She was just on the side of the road.
yeah, that's a good question. They didn't say anything about her car.
Because she's last seen at a gas station, but then her body, like, I don't think someone just kills themselves on the side of a freeway. Like, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of information,
I
but
was gonna say a lot of these is what and I'm glad we're talking about them because there's not a ton of information about these people that were found during all of this. And it's shocking.
yeah.
It's crazy that more isn't known or being spoken about.
Yeah. So on to the next victim, 30-year-old Lauren L Cho. And L is in parentheses. So was that like her nickname,
I
Jenna?
think that's probably what she went by.
Okay. She was from New Jersey and she disappeared on June 28th of this year. Then her remains were found in Yucca Valley and they were confirmed to be her actually just days ago. Of course, it'll take a long time to get toxicology results, so hopefully that will provide authorities with more information about what happened to Lauren. She was Korean American, which made her case obtain a renewed interest when the world started looking for Gabby. And then you had the other people saying, what about minorities? What about Indigenous women? So then she started getting more attention. Her case started getting more attention. Her family was able to use this time and opportunity, and maybe that helped. There was also a heated debate going on in social media about whether or not race played a part in news coverage about missing persons, like we're saying right now. There is information about these, like you can obtain all of that information, but it just usually comes out about other people. It's not like we can only get information about Gabby Petito. I'm sure there's information about this girl. It just hasn't been exposed by the media.
Right.
So her remains were found on October 9th, like I said, in the open desert in Yucca Valley. The actual area is about 30 miles northeast of Palm Springs. So we're talking like middle of nowhere desert. And in the past few decades, it's become super popular for artists, and tons of people have built or purchased tiny Airbnbs for artists to go out there and be inspired and all of that stuff. So that's where she was staying. And authorities supposedly searched her rental thoroughly, as well as the area where her remains were found. There's been no explanation from authorities in regards to that. Her family has created a Facebook page called Missing Person Lauren L Cho, where the latest information is posted by her closest circle. But that's all of the information I was able to find.
So she's just dead in the middle of nowhere and we know nothing and we don't know. That's so sad. And it's like, gosh, when you're in places like that, there's probably no cameras unless someone's got like doorbell cameras or something. Like, I mean, I think it's gonna hopefully they'll get some answers from I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the possibilities would be.
It's just another example of women protect yourselves, like have a weapon, have something. And I'm not saying that it would have saved any of these women necessarily. I don't know. And maybe they did have something, but all of the women listening and men that have daughters and wives. We need to protect ourselves. Clearly,
Yeah.
it's scary out there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's I always like to think that I'm like adventurous and I want to go camping and I want to go do all these things with my kids. And like the more we hear about these stories, the more I'm deterred and I'm getting too nervous to like do the things that I want to do because you just don't know what kind of crazy people are hanging out in these spaces.
Crazy people are everywhere. You've got to live your life. I think it's just about being prepared, and that
Yeah.
is having something to protect yourself with.
Yeah. So the next person that we're going to talk about is Josue Calderon. He's a 33-year-old father. Rumors quickly started when they found this body because they thought it's Brian Laundrie, and it was found on October 9th, but was identified as Josue Calderon. And he was from Rhode Island on the Blue Ridge Parkway along the Appalachian Trail below the Yadkin Valley Overlook in North Carolina. So it would make sense of why people kind of assumed, a male in this area. They thought maybe it was Brian, and that's why it got attention, but that's also why he was found. So like all the other cases that we've been talking about today, not a ton of information is being known yet. Hopefully, because of how and why it was found, there will be more eyes on it to kind of follow it and put the pressure to like have more information be released and to like work this case. So details of how he was killed weren't released. However, this station WLOS was quoted investigators saying that he was, quote, stabbed to death. So I don't know if they overheard that or they were given that information or what, but we don't know for sure, but that's what the station is saying. And his family members say that he didn't own a vehicle, which is concerning because he was found 800 miles away from where he lived. So how did he get there? Like, why was he there? Like, it's very confusing because he lived in a town of Cumberland and then which is north of Providence, Rhode Island, but then he was found, 800 miles away.
That's really far. That
Really
must
far.
be like hitchhiking or a trucker or somebody going a very
Yeah,
long
like I don't
distance.
know. Like it's very strange. So this incident is being investigated as a homicide, obviously, because you're not gonna stab yourself. Special agents from the National Park Service Investigative Services Branch with support from NPS law enforcement rangers are leading the investigations. And they've released, it says information gathered by investigators continues to suggest there's no ongoing concern for public safety. So this kind of goes back to Kylan and Crystal, right? Like, okay, they were killed by someone, not themselves, but you're not in immediate danger. Like, how do they, is it just kind of like just to appease people? Like, I don't understand how you can say someone was murdered. We don't know who it was, but you're fine.
Well, like we were saying about the FBI, they step in to stop society from like falling apart. And, one of I have heard just from being a true crime aficionado that they try really hard to say as soon as they can that the community is safe because people get so riled
Panic,
up.
yeah.
Um, but I don't understand it either. They did that in the Delphi case. Like the next day, they said, we don't think that the public is in danger. And I don't know. I know they try their best and they're doing what they can with what information they have, but I don't know why they come out and say that, other than, like you said, to calm people down.
Yeah. So that's all we know about him so far right now. Very
Josue.
alarming, but
Yeah.
hopefully his family will get some answers.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. I cannot believe how many people were found by this, but we keep saying more and more. But the next person is Maya Marcano. She was 19 from Florida. She was found dead on October 2nd in Orlando. She was a student at Valencia College and had been missing for over a week by the time her body was found. She was last seen at the Arden Villas apartment complex in Orlando, where she lived on September 24th. Officials shared horrifying details of the case, revealing she was found bound at her hands and feet with duct tape. The Orange County Sheriff John Mina reiterated that a man named Armando Caballero, 27, is, quote, the person responsible for her death, and officials are not looking for other suspects. The kicker is that Armando was a maintenance worker at the where she was found, and 3 days after she disappeared, he killed himself. So
Oh.
they believe, he murdered her and then killed himself. Authorities previously said that Armando had expressed a romantic interest in Maya, but she rebuffed his advances. And because he was a maintenance worker, he possessed a key fob to access all the apartments. And that's what he used to enter Maya's apartment just before she disappeared. And authorities said that, quote, there's no indication that there was sexual assault of any kind, and the cause and manner of death are yet to be determined by the medical examiner's office. He said officials believe that Armando was waiting inside her apartment on September 24th. He later killed her and hid her body at the area of the other Orlando apartment complex based off of information that police had found so far. So there's not really a mystery here. It seems like they know what happened, but again, with people searching for other things, you find these people that have gone missing, and it's interesting. I feel like this isn't the first time we've heard of stuff like this happening. And her parents are suing the complex, basically saying, like, I mean, in my opinion, why do they have to access? I feel like when I used to work in apartments, first of all, none of us had a master key. Like, there was a device that we had in our back offices. Like, if you needed an extra key, that you would go and find the key to that apartment, and it had like a logging system. So so like, why isn't that more widely used? Like, no one should have a master key to an entire complex. It just
Yeah, but I
does
think that's
not
how it
safe.
used to be. So the older complexes are like that. You worked in a
Yeah.
very new city.
Yeah. So her parents are definitely striving for change with this lawsuit. It's very new. So we don't have a lot of information on that yet, but I hope that they're able to make some changes, because like I said, no one should have a master key, or if there is some sort of reason that there's master keys, they need to be like logged in and out or something and only used on a certain base. I don't know, have a little bit more balance in checking, I guess is my point, because it's too
And the
easy.
person, I mean, background checking this
Yes.
guy. Did
That's
he have
another
a
part.
background?
That's part of their lawsuit also. I don't think that we have information of what the actual complex has done yet, because they're not, I don't think they're being super cooperative. But yeah, did you background check them? Like,
And again, it's another story. And this is awful because somebody came into her locked apartment, her home, like
yeah,
invaded her. Nobody is ready for that. But
no,
again,
absolutely not.
have something to protect yourself. If you're in an apartment, get a wood dowel. If you have a sliding glass door, and put that dowel in there, like find ways
Yeah, I
to
mean,
make sure that you are
literally in
secure.
this case, she had no chance of having him not in her house. Like, there's just nothing around to have prevented that, except for him not working there. If there were signs that he maybe shouldn't. I don't know.
And it's
But
interesting that there's no sexual assault. I wonder,
no,
because she had rebuffed him again, it's a rage killing.
yeah. So it's very sad, and this is one of those cases that I think we will have way more information as time goes on.
Yeah,
A lot of
her
things are
family's been very
happening.
vocal.
It's getting a little bit more pickup from the media. So we'll definitely have updates on this one at some point.
Yeah. And moving on to another person that was found during the search for Gabby. And this one we touched on a little bit on our episode about Gabby. He was from Houston, Texas. His name was Robert Laurie, and he died by suicide in the Grand Tetons National Park. And his remains were found not far from where her body was found. So who's to say that that didn't help them move in that direction? And it's just so heartbreaking. He disappeared on August 20th. He was last seen with a duffel bag, a sleeping bag, and a tent inside the Bridger Teton National Forest. His body was discovered on September 28th, nearly a week after Gabby was found, following a 4-hour search that included 3 canine teams and 25 search volunteers. So he was a father of 2, died by suicide. heartbreaking. On to the next one. This one is creepy to no end. It's like deja vu. It's eerily similar to Gabby Petito's story, who is the connector of all of these cases. This married couple from New Hampshire had also adopted the traveling lifestyle of Petito and Laundrie. They were living and traveling out of their large van. The woman's name was Emily Ferlazzo, 22, and she was reported missing by her parents after her husband, Joseph Ferlazzo, who's 41, had returned to her parents' house in New Hampshire without her. He was alone, and he was alleging that he had not seen her since Saturday. Sound familiar? I mean,
it's crazy how similar this is.
But unlike the Laundrie case, we do know what happened, and that's because Joseph Ferlazzo allegedly confessed. He's currently being held without bail, with a judge citing the, quote, great weight of evidence, end quote, provided by police. Many of those details became public once the affidavit was submitted in court. 41-year-old Joseph pled not guilty in late October to one charge of first-degree murder in the shooting death of his wife. According to the affidavit, the couple, who were celebrating their first wedding anniversary, drove to New Hampshire to Bolton on October 15th. Investigators added in a separate interview that both of them had previously lived in Vermont and had ties to the area, but declined to give additional details. Joseph told detectives he shot to death his wife, Emily, early Saturday inside their vehicle in Bolton, and he later dismembered her body with a saw, police said. Joseph appeared in court via video conference from the state prison in St. Albans. He was ordered to be held without bail pending a hearing. The not guilty plea was entered on Ferlazzo's behalf by his defense attorney, which is interesting since he confessed.
Yeah.
But police say there has been a, quote, history of domestic violence within the relationship, and Emily has been seen with scratches and bruises. He said that the night that they had gotten into a brutal fight, he said that Emily was punching, kicking, and arguing with him. It's always what it is, right? It's all the woman. She eventually stopped and laid down on their makeshift bed inside their camper van. About 5 to 10 minutes later, he retrieved a handgun and he shot Emily twice in the head. He moved her lifeless body to the bathroom of the camper van and then dismembered her. Awful, heartbreaking. There's still stuff to learn, though. I mean, if you see somebody with bruises, I'm anemic and I'm clumsy. How many times do you see me with bruises? I mean, people are constantly
terrible example because you like hit yourself in the face with things like
I know, but you know what? People say things to me and I'm so thankful. Like it's hard. It's surprising. Like Janine, my friend who's from Germany, immediately will say something. What is on your arm? What happened to you? And she's like very serious. And I'm like, thank goodness for women like that. Because, you know, sometimes you have to be taken and like shaken and know that somebody else is out there and you have a way out. And I just feel like in domestic violence cases, these women are so scared to leave,
and they're so dependent on these men, and that's how it's by design. And it's just every time we cover one of these, my heart just like breaks into a million pieces, and like, what can we do other than trying to be safe spaces and like, you know, donating to people who are experts in this field. And I think
it's really important that we educate our daughters to look for these signs, because we're hearing so many stories of this was a married couple. Gabby and Brian were engaged. They had been together for years, and you know, somebody had to have seen something along the way. There had to have been domestic violence, and I'm not blaming anybody because I know it used to be a very big stigma, and it's like we don't butt in. Like I personally was with my dad once when he went to get into a situation to stop it, and the woman screamed at him and said, "Do you know how badly I'm going to be beat because you're doing this? Leave." And my dad was like, I don't know what to do, because all he ever wants to do is help women.
Yeah.
And it's just so complicated. And I don't want to hear these stories anymore.
I know we're talking about them way too often. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And these are only the ones that we know about because it got so bad that someone died.
Yeah.
So this next one, we literally have no information on, but it's worth mentioning because it's a person who, deserves to find out what happened. So when there was another rumor that they had found Brian Laundrie when a male body was found in a dumpster at one of Alabama's Walmart markets on September 20th. The same day, police received several reports of a possible sighting of a runaway near the town of Tillman's Corner. The Mobile County Sheriff's Office later denied that the body was related to the Petito case and confirmed it to belong to an unnamed homeless man. Literally, that is all that is mentioned anywhere.
Yeah, I remember because this went on all of the channels. It was breaking news because they were positive it was Brian Laundrie because, like they said, they had seen a runaway, like a surveillance camera had captured a image of somebody and it kind of looked like him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sadly what happens. I'm listening to this podcast right now about a man who was in an accident on the border, and he was from Mexico. They have no information of who he was, so they just call him Garage because he was found next to a garage. He's comatose. He's like in a vegetative state. But Garage. I mean, these are human beings. This is a mother carried this person for 10 months and loved it, and I don't know, it just breaks my heart, when people are like, oh, it was a homeless person, oh, it was a drug addict. It was like, no, that was somebody's baby. That was somebody's pride and joy. That was somebody.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if it was because they were homeless, they didn't have shelter and food and whatever, or if it was a murder. I mean, there's really no information that I can find on it, so something more comes out, we'll definitely tell you. But I feel like the lesson learned is that there is missing people everywhere. There are people that need to be found and need more voices and more help. And I wish the media would pick up more of these cases. Like, why not? I don't really
I think it's slowly happening. If you've been watching 48 Hours in Dateline recently, they're listening because they're doing Indigenous girls, and lots of podcasters are too. Some of the top true crime podcasters are doing exclusive Indigenous cases, and that's great. It took long enough, but okay, it's happening, and it should continue to happen.
Yeah, 100%. So there's how many did we do? 9 people?
9
that were found during all of this. So I'm glad that they've been found. Maybe some answers can come out of it and parents can have some closure, or families or whatever.
And let's learn from it and protect ourselves. And that pepper spray that you've been I have to get that. Oh, I have to buy that on Amazon. Do it today after listening to this. Protect yourself.
Whatever you need. Keep a
taser, razor, Chinese stars,
whatever you got. Oh,
really quick, during the LA riots, I might have already told you this, but my dad was stuck in them because he was a salesman and he traveled, and he was like, don't worry about it, I broke off a leg of the chair in the back of my car. So he had a chair because he sold furniture, and he broke the leg off and he was wielding it outside protecting his car. So that's a Midwestern man for you. He doesn't need a gun. He just needs a stick of wood.
Love it. I wish my husband was like that.
I know.
Literally, everyone, we need you to be safe
and trust your gut.
Absolutely. We will see you guys next time. Please follow us, do all the things, social, connect with us. We love you, and we'll see you next week.
Adios.
Bye.